So I'm Jeannie Falk-Jones. I'm one of the agronomists with K-State Research and Extension. I serve Wallace, Sherman, and Cheyenne counties in northwest Kansas. And as you can see, we're standing here in front of an irrigated cornfield today to talk about stalk strength. While in irrigated fields, sometimes we don't worry as much about stalk strength. We do worry about it in our dryland fields. And part of that goes back to stalk integrity at this point, goes clear back to thinking about what was going on during grain fill. And the reason for that is because stress at grain fill can definitely affect how well our stalks stand here at harvest. And so the reason we go back and think through what's going on at grain fill is because there's a lot of demand on that plant during grain fill because all of their priority is focused on filling those kernels. And so when we're thinking about filling kernels, what we need for that is sugar and starch and energy. All of that needs to be going into filling kernels. But when we have stress on a plant, and this year during grain fill, we had a lot of stress going on. Stress on a plant means decreased photosynthesis. That also means decreased amount of carbohydrates that go in to fill that kernel. And the reason that is concerning is because we have a high demand for that during grain fill. And so what the plant will do is it will cannibalize or it will rob out of other portions of the plant in order to fill those ears or the heads or the pods that we're seeing out there on the plant. And so stress during grain fill causes decreased photosynthesis, decreased amount of carbohydrates. So those carbohydrates really need to come from somewhere. So where do they go to get them? The plant goes down to the stalk. It goes to the leaves. It can actually even go to the roots of the plant to take some of those carbohydrates to put them in the ear during grain fill. And so what we're seeing here is that lower parts of the plant may be weakened because of taking those carbohydrates, the sugar, the starch out of those cells lower in the plant. On dryland corn, sometimes we'll see it on the upper part of the plant. If you think about dryland cornfields that have been under a lot of stress, as we're looking at them here during harvest, and if you drive around and look at any dryland corn, you may see this, that the stems are broke off right above the ear, and that's because the top part of the plant was robbed out of. You may see during grain fill that those lower leaves will start to senesce, turn brown because the plant is not as needing those leaves near as much because the upper part of the plant is capturing the sunlight to make photosynthesis. And so we may see the lower leaves that get sloughed off. And so it's cannibalizing out of other parts of the plant in order to put priority into those ears, which is important when we're thinking about what we're wanting to harvest out here in the field. The other thing that can be a concern with this is that as we're making some of those parts of the plant less structurally sound, that can also mean that we are having issues with other pests coming in. What that means is that we may be seeing stalk rot showing up in some of these plants. If we slice stems on some of this dryland corn, we're going to see some stalk rot showing up potentially in some of these. If we're thinking about sunflowers or soybeans, we may see an increased damage from stalk boring pest insects that are in there, stalk borers that are working their way up and also compromising the strength of that stalk. And so other things that are going on out here in the field after we rob from parts of the plant in order to fill kernels may be showing up also. So while we're thinking about, we've been talking about dryland corn, we're also standing in front of irrigated corn. This can be a concern in irrigated corn also, especially if you have a short well. And, you know, we had a pretty lengthy period during grain fill where we weren't having a lot of help from Mother Nature and struggling to kind of keep up with evaporative demands of those plants and what is all needed in order to go into that kernel. So we had a lot of stress just on irrigated ground, on dryland ground during grain fill, which is resulting, I think, in some of the less stalk strength that we're seeing out here in the field. And we're seeing it on dryland corn. We're seeing it in grain sorghum. Many times you'll see the tillers on grain sorghum tipping over before the main stems, but they get cannibalized out of also. And so that's part of our issue with why stalks just aren't quite as strong. And that's actually a result of stress clear back during grain fill, when that plant was really needing a lot of energy and a lot of sugar and a lot of starch in order to fill those kernels on the plant. So with that kind of answers some questions of what we're seeing here for stalk rot. Everybody's putting some priority on those fields that are not standing near as well in order to get them harvested, because before they go down, because it's a lot more fun to think about harvesting grain sorghum while it's standing up than trying to pick it up off the ground. So with that, if you have any questions, please give me a holler. I'm happy to get them answered for you. You can get a hold of me on the experiment station in Colby, or on as I got a butterfly on me, get a hold of me on the experiment station in Colby, or the extension offices in Goodland, St. Francis, and Sharon Springs, or you can send me a message here on Facebook, or drop me an email or anything along those lines, and I'll try to get them answered for you. So, all right, we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.